Anyway, should we talk about old games today? A lot of like old games good and new games stinky is like the starting point. And then it just ends up with everybody squabbling. People saying, no, actually, I think they're good. Or no, actually, I think they suck. And then that's the whole argument. They're too busy being like, here's why your game sucks. They never spend enough time talking about why old games are fun and why people like them. So one of the most fun things about old games is that everything in them is hard to do. Now that sounds a little contradictory. Input readers for the games, the execution for the games, and doing basic actions because of the lack of buffer or how strict the game is about what it's demanding from you, either in terms of notation or like how the inputs are determined in the game, is so brutal that moving around the screen, air dashing, wave dashing, moving and grooving in them is hard to do. And that makes it so that once you learn to move around the screen in a way that's like fluid and solid, you feel so cool. And because there's naturally a barrier to do simple things, learning to get from not being able to do anything to making it to the fact that you can like do complex actions just happening all the time is really fun. It's a really cool part about old games. The first time I ever did like Gunflame, FRC, IED, like jump S, Sidewinder, you're just like, wait, I'm a fucking beast. And then you just do it without thinking. And they just constantly have these execution tests that your brain just has to send to your hands, and your hands has to not fumble for you to do simple actions all the time. You may be thinking like, well, doing basic things is hard. That doesn't sound fun, but it is fun because it gives you something to chew on and learn for forever, because you can always improve without a second thought. You become like a new human. Like watching yourself play when you just, everything clicks and you're schmoving feels so good. The other thing about old games, there's almost an infinite amount for you to dig into your own character and learn unique things about them, because the games are built in like an archaic way that there are almost always character specific combos and interactions. Basically every game has like, oh, this is my character's B&B, except it works on 2 characters. It drops on this and you can do like 5 sidewinders off that, and then the ender of my combo doesn't work here, but like this character, when they're crouching, you get this. And like there's so many things in the game that just don't work. So you have to find different solutions for every character, which means that you can find different ways to pressure, different ways for offense, different ways to approach in neutral, different ways to combo, 15 or 20 characters to dig into and find unique interactions and solutions over and over and over and over. In old games, it's like you need a character per combo oftentimes. Even if in the beginning you don't need it, eventually you can optimize and then have specific things for each character, right? Because these games, the old games especially, have less information about them, less completed bodies of work about where to find things, I would go to look things up. Like, what is the soul combo on this character? And there would just not be information about like what the correct combo is. I would have to like try to dig through and find match footage and like see what their combo is and then see why that combo is that way. But like there wasn't that much match footage. I've never seen anybody else get this confirmed. Let me invent the combo myself. And sometimes it's cool and sometimes it's frustrating. It's like, dude, my combos just don't work on this character and there's nothing good to do in replacement. I can make a best case scenario, but my best case scenario still kind of sucks. And that can be frustrating, but it's part of the discovery of weird games like that. You may learn like a lightweight combo, and let's say there's like 5 lightweight characters in the game. Oh, this lightweight combo you worked, it actually only works on 2 of the 5 lightweight characters. The other 3, one combo works on one of them, and then the other 2, no one's ever tested what works on them because no one plays those characters. So good luck, go find it out yourself. And so much of old games is like that, where a lot of like what is out there is just what you personally know to do in your hands and brain against characters and in situations and matchups and stuff. So it makes them so personal. Let's say you're playing Street Fighter 6 and you're like, dude, I don't know how to beat Blanca Ball. What do I do? You type into YouTube, how do I beat Blanca Ball? And it's like, what's up guys? It's your boy Diaphone here. We're gonna go over how to beat the 5 most annoying moves in Street Fighter 6. Make sure you like and subscribe. So let's talk about Blanca Ball. In the old game, when you're like, Soul Bad Guy, how to combo Biken when I hit her with 5k anti-air and I super jump and I don't have bar to do force break Sidewinder. Type that into YouTube and then see what happens. Even just dealing with basic things like how do you structure offense against Biken, because it's like its own challenge to figure out how to even do pressure against her in the game. Modern games, everything has a solution. Like everybody everywhere will tell you how to beat or stop or handle every scenario. Whereas old games, even though people are trying, they're trying to like archive and show you how to do stuff and yada, 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 etc. There's just like way less documented stuff out there. And it's like difficult to do because there's so many things to document. You can spend your own time and energy learning and engaging with the game and the system and like finding your own solution. And for a lot of people, that is really fun, and you can spend a lifetime doing it. Finding unique and interesting and fun things that only you know how to do and only you know how to stop from other characters and stuff. You come up with some sneaky thing to do, and then your opponent goes for the common response, and then you have a sick counterplay ready, and you're just like, I invented this. And then you do it and you're like, damn, I'm good. Inventing option selects in old Injustice to like beat some character's option on Wake Up was so sick. It's just really cool because you know that it's yours. A thing about old games though that is also true is that they are hard to do this stuff in. And because of that, oftentimes learning something simple and good will carry you really far. In old games, everything you do is so strong because it's very unlikely that the other person ever knows how to deal with it, right? Like there's no good way for them to test how to stop it. There's no good resources about how to defeat it. Have you ever played a game, someone new is like, oh, I just picked up this old game. You haven't played it in like 5 years, but then they've been playing it for a while, and you just boot up and play them and you beat them with like some level 1 strategy. And like they literally just don't know how to stop it, so they could never beat you. Unless you like spend time learning these specific gimmicks, you can't even make it to level 2, which means you can't even fight against me. Learning gimmicks or like sharply pointed options for your character will take you so far. Whereas in modern games, like something I mentioned, like the Blanca ball, that will be solved so fast. Like people will come up with ways to deal with this. And in old games, generally the solutions are very specific for things. Whereas in new games, like almost always moves are designed with like, this move has this strength and this weakness, and this is the natural counter to this move. We're not going to design something that's stupid and impossible to beat or something. We're going to design something that makes sense. And then in the old game, someone pulls out Zappa's sword, and then you're just like, surely this must have lots of counterplay and interactive design. It's a video game. There must be a way for me, the opponent, to deal with Zappa's sword. They were like, and then you just lose. Then you get to a game like Super Turbo, where like I asked James Chen, how does this matchup work? And he goes, oh yeah, the matchup's just like 8-2. This character hits this button and they just win, and the other character can't do anything about it. And I'm like, how do you beat it? And you're like, well, sometimes you do this and it works, but if you do this, they can do that to stop it. It's just you gotta hope that they don't. And I'm like, okay. It's much harder in old games. Not only are you throwing a weird knowledge check at them, but like navigating the game and doing basic things is harder. In Street Fighter 4, for example, when Balrog did dash punch and he was punishable by jabs, in a modern game, you would just hit jab and a DP and you would always punish it, right? But punishing Balrog dash punch in the old game was a 1-frame link on block with no buffer. So you could just like do moves or things that were unsafe. Your opponent was very unlikely to punish it. Great example of something like this. Filipino Man plays Rose, right? And Rose is a very uncommon character. People don't know the matchup. Her EX drill was like -6 or something. I watched him at EVO do point blank EX drill -6 into Yosan Jury's face. Yosan missed the punish by so many frames that Filipino Man crouch teched defensively on -6, and his button hit Yosan first. Part of what makes older games like that more difficult is also what makes them easier to be effective in. It's harder to do simple things, which means you get away with more, which means you can like do sillier things and you just don't get punished for it. Throwing stuff against the wall will work in them in some ways. Now, I'm not saying all the time, but it's what makes them a little loosey-goosey, you know, and that's what kind of makes them interesting. Purify wrote a old game versus new game thing. And in this, what they wrote was basically like old games in some way are just like easier than new games because you can just like learn some things and then beat everybody up in it. And I think there's some truth to what they're saying in there. Like the difficulty in learning plus R here, they wrote, on the other hand, Omito, Johnny, and Exer just in general didn't make many mistakes. He just did the good optimal thing pretty much all the time, and it was suffocating to witness. This is because, yeah, Exert is a comparatively difficult game in the grand scheme of things, and Johnny's a hard character, for sure. But it's a ceiling that's more attainable because the game is the right amount of easier than the game before it, than plus R. That, however, makes it very, very hard to fight against in compared to plus R, where again, pretty much everyone, even at their best, can be off guard at any moment due to its difficulty and speed of decision. I think about this because I was watching the tournament where KB Nova was playing plus R. You know, everybody's like, oh, KB Nova Zappa is like so good, he beats everybody, he's the best. And then that Soul player, I don't remember who the Soul player was, in neutral just kept doing Grand Viper or like Riot Stamp or like whatever over and over and over and over. KB Nova literally just like couldn't stop this Soul player from going fucking feral. KB Nova just dies to the Soul player, who then just like loses to everybody else. Yeah, like the Soul player was good, but like also if some Soul player pulls up and does that to Omito and Exerd, like he's dead. And I thought this post was really interesting. Honestly, this post is like a really fun way to think about it. Newer games are like, everybody can reach a certain level easier, but also when you truly optimize at the top end, those players are like dominant. It's really hard to optimize old games and play them perfectly. You tend to have more room to like explore weird, strange interactions because people are like flubbing things constantly, and then new weird scrambles are happening, and then you have to make the best of those, and then you flub those, and then it gets weird, with rare exceptions of moments of brilliance. That's what makes them unique and different from modern games, where there's a lot less of that slippery nature. There's a lot more room to optimize and be correct more often and make less mistakes. Like if you can do everything in the game all the time always and never make any mistakes, then the game is probably not designed in a way that's compelling for competitive gamers to have fun in, you know. That's one of the challenges in modern games, is like finding ways for people to be incorrect. When you're designing modern games, you have to decide where the difficulty and optimizing them will come from. Most games have decided that difficulty is not in execution, it's not in motion inputs, it's not in punishes. They give you buffers or leniency in input windows to make things happen more consistently. So they have to test you in other ways. The biggest and easiest way for fighting games to make more challenging, interesting games is to make them faster. The faster a game goes, the more decisions you have to make, the more likely it is that you flub basic decision making constantly, right? If you look at my preferences over the years, I think a lot of people know that I'm a Street Fighter commentator. I've done a lot of Street Fighter in my life. But Street Fighter is very slow for my taste, right? Like a lot of the other games I like are way, way faster. I like versus games a lot. Guilty Gear, obviously. KI is a very fast game. KI is like the drug addict version of Street Fighter, basically. The game is so fast to play and it's so draining to play because you don't have almost any downtime in it. It's naturally just a really explosive game. But that game was built around the time where games were starting to like try and be like, okay, how do we make this a little simpler for people to get involved? So I think if you're making a modern game that is the speed of a game like Street Fighter and it has the modern fillings, then afterwards you have to then figure out, how do we add complexity to the game if we don't want to make the speed of the game outrageously fast? Which is why things like the uni-grid system or like the Street Fighter drive gauge system is what makes for more compelling games, because it gives you room to be wrong, to make your decision making kind of have to be snappy and different and unique in moment-to-moment decisions without it just coming purely from execution tests or like the control of the game being nebulous. Adding an additional meter, like another lever to pull when you're backing up the bus and then going this way, and then you got to pull this lever here, and then you're doing this, and then you're juggling. Like the more things you can add on top of what you have to do, the wider the decision making space becomes, the more difficult doing basic things becomes. Like the more likely it is you flub things and you create a more interesting game with lots of fun decisions. And when people do manage all those things well, then it's fun to watch, and it's also very impressive, and it makes for a cooler game. This whole talk was not to discourage anybody from liking either, because I like both styles of games. When games are like so hard that doing the hardest stuff is like very, very difficult for most humans to do all the time, then you can make a game that's fun and interesting to optimize long term. And like when I say optimize, I don't even think most people probably do. They just like try to be as optimal as they can. Yeah, when people are like, you know, I really like the mind games of fighting games, but like I didn't want to learn how to do a motion input. I'm like, dude, you'll play Helldivers and you'll resupply, which is a fucked up tiger knee motion backwards, literally super jump, magnetic blast in Marvel 3, but you're telling me you can't fucking throw a fireball in a fighting game? You can do motion inputs under extreme duress when there's 7 Bile Titans, but when you're sitting there in training mode, like quarter circle punch, to throw a fireball with Ryu, it's too hard. You guys are gonna look me in the eyes and tell me that that shit is too difficult? Bet. Just say you don't want to do it. Just say that you're like, I don't like how Ryu looks. I'd rather fight bugs. Fine, but don't lie to me. Okay, don't fucking lie to me, because I know that you can do it.